As we all know, Nintendo loves to experiment. Throughout the years, they've created all kinds of weird games and consoles that were way ahead of their time. Sometimes this allowed them to truly dominate the industry and become the king of it all, like we are seeing right now with the Nintendo Switch. However, in the past, they have also tried things that just didn't work, and one of those ideas is a VR Super Mario game. An idea that didn't get too far because the whole concept just didn't work and never really caught on. However, what was the game about? On which console was it supposed to be released? And why was it actually cancelled? Well, let's find out. But first, introducing my new store, Wily.gg, the place to buy your new games and get your hands on eShop cards for Nintendo as well as Xbox. And don't forget, use code Wily at checkout to save 10%. Now let's continue. Now, most of you only know about the weird console ventures of the last 10 years, like the 3DS, which created a semi-3D effect, or the Wii U that had a tablet as a controller. Sure, these ideas were a bit weird, and both didn't really work, because while a lot of people bought these consoles, many didn't use their special features all that much. But throughout the history of the company, they've tried other stuff that was even more outlandish. And one of those was a VR device known as the Virtual Boy. And no, this thing wasn't created recently, but actually a really long time ago. It was some sort of semi-portable video game console that was released in 1995 by Nintendo. And it was weird. It all starts with how the system works. It used a monochromatic, which means red and black visor, that simulated a 3D view on its games. Now this didn't work too well, as you can imagine. Sure, to an extent it created depth in a similar way to what the 3DS does, but nowhere near as well. Personally, I've even messed around with it at an event known as the Retro Spielmesse in Norway, and as soon as I used it, I noticed immediately it was lacking in certain ways. One big problem is the size of the screen. It was very small when you had to really put it on your head like a VR headset. However, you couldn't really do that. It stood on some sort of stand and you had to lean forward and put your face against it while playing, which was anything but comfortable. Aside from that, the whole experience was just clunky. The controller was odd, looking through the thing didn't work too well, and that was just the beginning of it all. Clearly the Virtual Boy had several flaws, and this led to its discontinuation after just 1 year. And so it is noteworthy for being one of the few financially failed products of Nintendo. One of the reasons it failed is because it was slightly rushed to get the people on the team to work on the new Nintendo 64 console. But that wasn't all. Development for this device was also really expensive, which made it all a tedious process and a hard sell to consumers. Especially because for some people, it caused eye strain after playing it for a while, which I experienced firsthand as well. Now, another unique feature this console has was an EXT port, which was probably going to be used for multiplayer features. If this was the case, then the Virtual Boy never got around to releasing a multiplayer cable, possibly due to the console's low ratings and discontinuation, which is a bit sad because due to all of this, we never really saw what this console could actually do. And the most surprising thing was the fact that it was made by one of the most gifted Nintendo designers. It was the last product from former veteran Nintendo designer Gunpei Yokoi, who also came up with the Game Boy and worked himself up in the company from a janitor. But for some reason, this console was just a flop, and it was also the last thing he made before he died in a tragic car accident. And so this was the last thing he worked on as far as we know. And before it was discontinued, they actually developed games for it, as you can imagine. Now in the end, they were able to release 22 games before they had to stop. And they also had to abandon a bunch of other projects that were still in the works. And one of those was the game Virtual Boy Mario Land, also known as Mario's Adventure. A title that didn't get too far, to be honest. As far as we know, there's only a single level out there, and it was a playable demo that they unveiled at the Winter Consumer Electronics Show in 1995 in Las Vegas. The game was going to be a two-dimensional side-scrolling game that would use three-dimensional perspectives, such as moving between the background and the foreground of the level, which was actually new for the time, and even now it's still a rare concept that's almost never seen in games. As far as I can remember, it's only a thing in some of the Yoshi titles like the first Yoshi's Island and Yoshi's Woolly World. Now this game would star Mario as the main character and would use classic Super Mario Bros. Style elements such as warp pipes, Koopa Troopas, Goombas, jumping piranha plants, and question mark blocks. Now when it comes to the story of this Virtual Boy title, we don't really know what it was going to be about, but you can see some interesting things in the screenshots and footage of the demo that could give us an idea. For example, a large Wario-like figure which functions similarly to a thwomp was seen in the playable demo. Due to this, a lot of people thought it was meant to be a sequel to Super Mario Land 2 6 Golden Coins, which was released on the Game Boy in 1992. And it's also one of my favorite 2D Mario games! But that wasn't all. Nintendo also released a Wario Land game on the Virtual Boy. So maybe the story of that game would have influenced the story of this Super Mario title. In that game, Wario's on a quest to find treasure in the Awazon. Not Amazon, no, Awazon. And after fighting his way through many obstacles, he's able to claim it. So who knows? Maybe that played a role in it as well. Now aside from this, we can see some interesting stuff in this demo when it comes to the layout. Because in certain areas, an overhead view was displayed, much like we see in the Legend of Zelda series of games. As you can imagine, this was another thing that is normally never seen in the series, so it was clear that they were going to experiment. However, none of this happened, of course. Mostly because the console was a huge flop, and they already noticed this during the production of the game. And so Nintendo scrapped the original idea, and instead turned it into a title known as Mario Clash. This was originally part of the full game as well, and was going to function as some sort of mini-game. But in the end, it took over the whole project, and it was very similar to the original Mario Bros. Game. So you could argue that this was a remake of the first Mario title for a bit of a mediocre console. Now this version of the game did eventually release, but due to the poor performance of the Virtual Boy, it is rarely seen. And so, sadly enough, we never got the true Super Mario experience on the Virtual Boy, even though the concepts seen in this cancelled game are pretty cool. Now, at this point, I bet most of you will say, "But Wily, how is this a VR game? It is even more prehistoric than the 3DS." Well, yeah, you're right about that, and I would say it isn't really some sort of VR game. All it does is create depth in levels, which creates a bit of a 3D feel, just like the old Mario Kart titles did with tricks like Mode 7. But in the end, it isn't real VR. Heck, back then they couldn't even create 3D games, so this was certainly impossible for them. So while the idea behind it is cool, we never got it, and it could never live up to the hype. But if you want to check it out, people have created custom ROMs that allow you to play this one demo level. So check it out if you want to. But you can also do something else. Check out some of my other videos I've made by clicking on the screen right now or in the upper right corner. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was another bit of a obscure cancelled game, weird Nintendo history, something that barely anyone has seen. I mean, the fact that I saw a Virtual Boy and played on it, I played the Wario Land game, super rare. You never see those things. Never, ever. But I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any ideas, leave them down below. Subscribe, like, bell button, join, do all the good stuff. Help out your boy. And I'll be reading the comments the first week that the video is up, like I always do, so I know what you're typing. Bye!